Welcome into the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap, presented by Full Press Coverage, our good friends of Full Press Coverage, who have been extremely busy the past couple of days with all the football news, as they have a million football shows, and the Patriots are their primary team, and they have certainly been keeping everybody very busy, including ourselves, Sap, as we are football fans, not just basketball fans. But we are focused on this show on basketball. And oftentimes when we focus on basketball, that leads us to a conversation about LeBron James. LeBron James in the news again. Nothing bad this time. Well, like he's ever done anything really bad.
Once he ever done anything bad, that's the
that thing about the vaccine irked me the other week, Sap. That really
I wrote a column about that, but yeah.
Let's see if you're going to be writing a column about this. LeBron James, owner of the Boston Red Sox, buys into Fenway Sports Group. Sap, do you want to expound on that, or do you want me to read the details of his ownership agreement first?
Well, I mean, do you have the full agreement? Because that would take a while to read. I don't know how you got access to the contract.
the full legal papers, but I do have the bullet points, which are that Fenway Sports Group is now welcoming LeBron into the fold. He did own a 2% share of Liverpool, which is partially owned by Fenway Sports Group, but now he's bought into the whole kit and caboodle, which includes New England Sports Network, commonly referred to as NESN. If you aren't from here, you would say, what's NESN? It's New England Sports Network, where the Red Sox and Bruins air their games. Roush Fenway Racing, which is, like the title says, a racing things, and Fenway Sports Management, who obviously owns the Boston Red Sox. So now
and Fenway Park.
And Fenway Park, that's not a bad entity to own, even though
just that real estate alone is worth a lot of money.
Should be a museum and not a ballpark.
I agree with you. Well, the whole thing with this is it's 2% of Fenway Sports Group, which is valued at $7.3 billion. And they own the Red Sox, they own Fenway Park, they own 50% of Roush Racing, they own 80% of NESN. The Bruins own the other 20%. So don't tweet at LeBron if you don't like the crawl, during like Bruins games. He's not that hands-on with NESN. And they also own Liverpool FC. So this is a huge, whether you want to call it a conglomerate or not. So he owns 2% of that. So his value in that is about $150 million, although he's partners with Maverick Carter.
Is it a cash deal, do you think, Sep?
I'm not sure. Well, he can afford it. He can write a check for $150 million. But he had 2% of Liverpool FC back in 2011. So that's grown. So I'm sure that he was able to flip that for quite a profit and maybe use that profit to buy 2% of everything else. And again, Maverick Carter is involved with that. And I think it's a fascinating move here. I was ready to write a column actually for the Lowell Sun about the pushback against LeBron James in the region, but I think I was developing a straw man argument, which I try to avoid at all costs. There hasn't been much pushback. It's just like, okay, this is a guy who now owns two teams in the city. He's owned the Celtics for the last decade.
Oh, God.
And I just wanted to put that in. I mean, 5 straight playoff series wins over the Celtics since 2011, but now he owns 2% of the Red Sox. So, maybe he'll buy into the Bruins and the Patriots at some point. But I think it's fascinating, though, because what got me to thinking here is the competitive discussion that we have of LeBron James and Michael Jordan, right? Like the two biggest debates of the last 20 years have been what? LeBron or Michael, who's the GOAT, and who meant more to the Patriots dynasty, Belichick or Brady? Well, the last year, the second debate is certainly trending in the direction that Brady meant more than Belichick. But this LeBron Michael Jordan debate is fascinating because they never played against each other. I mean, Michael left the league in 2003. LeBron came into the league in 2003, and LeBron idolized Michael Jordan growing up. We talked a couple podcasts ago about how incredible it would be if LeBron and Michael Jordan got together, put together a PSA, trying to encourage people in the Black community to get the vaccine for COVID-19. And I think LeBron would probably do it, and Michael would probably push back because, he's his own guy. But I just find this funny how the two greatest players in the history of the sport attack business differently, right? Because Michael owns the Charlotte Hornets. He is the Jordan brand for Nike, which earns him about $160 million a year. So he doesn't share things, right? He owns the Hornets. He's the Jordan brand. I know he's involved in some, racing as well.
NASCAR, yeah.
NASCAR, right. And now LeBron is too with Roush Racing, which the Fenway Sports Group owns 50% of Roush Racing. So now LeBron's involved in that as well. But LeBron's more of an inclusive type guy, right? More diversified. He's got Spring Hill Entertainment, which employs 100 people. He's producing movies and TV shows, and he's got the I Promise schools, and he's put forth $100 million for education in the Akron
He's a spotlight
area.
guy. He likes to be, and
exactly.
Jordan's more of a string puller from behind the scenes with his businesses.
A recluse. Yeah, it's almost like I own the team. I'm Jordan Brand. I'm going to golf. I'm going to smoke cigars. I'm going to eat steaks. I've done it.
Wear
LeBron
Hanes.
seems like wear Hanes. Yeah. Whereas LeBron seems like he's really interested in this stuff, right? Magic Johnson kind of was like that, except that I just think LeBron is more curious and, quite frankly, brighter than Magic Johnson. And I'm not trying to disparage Magic Johnson. LeBron is a more curious guy than Magic. So, but I think what it speaks of is how they were as players, right? Because Michael was the guy who was like, get the hell out of the way. I'm going to go do this. LeBron's a guy who's like, we're going to do it. I'm going to include this guy. I'm going to get him the shot. I may not necessarily always take the last shot. So it kind of explains where they come from. And you don't really change much from who you are. Michael's the guy who's like, get the hell out of the way. I'm going to knock everybody over to do it. LeBron is more inclusive.
I think that kind of goes to how when they started each making a lot of money
right.
outside of basketball, I'm pretty sure it seemed Michael just said, put me in the spot to make money, to Nike.
Yep.
And say, hey, I'll do this commercial. Just make sure it makes me a lot of money. I think LeBron pre-decision was like, hey, I want to try this myself, see if I can, market myself a little bit. And post-decision, I think that either Nike, whatever business managers he was around before, Nike said to him or whoever said to him, you got to get rid of these guys. You're taking bad advice. And then he started to either by choice or was forced to surround himself with better business people because he wasn't making good decisions. I mean, they weren't bad decisions in terms of he was committing crimes or hanging out with lowlies. He was just making decisions that made him look silly and PR hits.
Yeah. Now you got Maverick Carter and Rich Paul, two really bright guys that he entrusts.
Like I'm sure Jordan's just happy to collect the checks.
He gets $160 million a year from Nike for essentially doing whatever, like absolutely nothing except lending his name. I mean, that's power, right? $160 million a year for your name. That's branding. Man,
yeah, LeBron says, this is how I want to collect the checks. Michael Jordan says, just send me those checks.
Send me the check. And I think it could be
and there's nothing wrong with either approach.
No, and I also think it's a generational thing. And I'm the same age as Michael Jordan. It's like ends justify the means, where with LeBron, I think the means justify the ends. So, and that's kind of a philosophy in politics as well. I just find that whole thing fascinating. There were a few things out there that kind of turned me off a little bit. One of them was a tweet by Dan Shaughnessy, and I respect the hell out of Dan Shaughnessy. He's a fantastic columnist, but he tweeted out,
he's also a troll. He's a troll.
Oh, he's a troll. He's great at it. What else could the Red Sox do to make local fans hate them? And this was after the announcement that LeBron had bought into Fenway Sports Group. And it's like, I get
wrong.
it's probably not wrong, but how much of an impact is LeBron going to have on any of this stuff? I mean, does he think LeBron's all of a sudden going to become, or not?
For the YouTube viewers, zero.
Yeah, I mean, it's an investment.
He's got the pitching.
He's going to come out and throw out. He may not even show up at Fenway at any point. Maybe he will.
Get booed.
He would get booed. Yeah, but I also weigh in as like Peyton Manning and Sidney Crosby are kind of the other two athletes of the last, say, 15 years that are on the same level as LeBron in terms of people that Boston sports fans hate. Sidney Crosby with Pittsburgh, the Bruins, Pittsburgh rivalry's real. They despise Sidney Crosby. Peyton Manning, Patriot fans despise. And obviously LeBron's beaten the Celtics so many times that they despise him. What would the reaction be if Peyton Manning bought 2% of Fenway Sports Group or Sidney Crosby bought 2% of Fenway Sports Group? I wonder what the reaction would be. They probably still have similar things like, can you imagine, bringing in these guys that everyone rooted against to come in and buy that?
And if they threw out the first pitch, they'd get booed too.
They'd get booed too. So I was just waiting for my bell to go off and say there's going to be some sort of racist overtones here. Because, by the way, LeBron James has never said anything bad about the city of Boston. Remember when athletes weigh in and go, yeah, that's a real racist city. And he has never said a word. He's been respectful, respectful of the organization, the city, the fans. I mean, I thought one of the best moments of his career, there was a young kid that was sitting courtside and LeBron gave him his sneakers. I thought that was pretty cool. So
I'll say this about Celtics fans, though, Sap. This is an exaggeration, probably a generalization, maybe. If you're breaking it down demographically, they do tend to be a little bit more educated.
Absolutely.
And a little bit more white collar.
Yep.
Doesn't make them better. That's just the demographics of them. And a little bit more of, I think, understanding of what they're seeing on the court in terms of appreciation.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I agree with you.
Well, yeah. I don't think you can't be a real Celtics fan and say, yeah, I love LeBron James because he's tortured the team. I mean, he's tortured me, absolutely tortured me. But I do feel like if you were to hear a racial epithet be thrown at somebody, and maybe this is completely unfair, you'd much more likely hear it at a Bruins game or a Red Sox game.
Absolutely. Yeah, more so than at the Garden for the Celtics fans. I'm going to say in the 80s it was different.
I was born in 89, Sap, so I can't speak.
I was there in the 80s. There was incredible hatred of the Lakers. The Lakers were perceived, and they were the black team. They were Black America's team, and the Celtics were white America's team. I mean, that was obvious from the get-go in that series. Just watch highlights of it. The Celtics were loaded with white guys. The Lakers had an all-black lineup with the exception of Kurt Rambis, who was just there to goon things up. The Celtics white guys were great players. I used to always get turned off when people go, well, they just bring in all the white guys. They go, yeah, Larry Bird, Kevin McHale, Dean Ainge was an all-star. Scott Wedman was an all-star. Yeah, it's like, Bill Walton, one of the greatest players of all time. It's like, please do not ever accuse Red Auerbach of being a racist. He was far ahead of his time.
He's the Branch Rickey of the NBA.
Without question. So, that part would turn me up. But the fan base in the 80s really was probably the most fervent of any point in Celtics history because they got a white guy that was the best player in the league in Larry Bird, and they just kind of ran with it. And in come the Lakers, who actually the Lakers' style of play in the 80s was closer to the Celtics style of play in the 60s. It was a fast pace. The Lakers go up and down the court like the Celtics did in the 60s. So if you really knew basketball, you're like, well, the Lakers play kind of like the Celtics did 20 years ago when they were winning all these titles. But people don't go that deep into it. And, yeah, that was more of a case then. Now, TD Garden, as you said, if you took the four fan bases in Boston, I would assume that Celtic fans probably have a higher degree of college degrees, probably the highest income, whatever the case may be. So they're going to look at LeBron and say, yeah, this, as much as we boo him and he's hurt us, we do respect the guy.
Well, it's also by far the blackest league of the four major sports. So, if you're a basketball fan, you love basketball, odds are you're rooting for a lot of black guys. So,
yeah.
I feel like it's kind of hard to be racist and a big NBA fan because, who are you really going to root for? Luka Doncic? He's not even American.
He's not even American. That's the who's. We always play this game. Name
who's the best white American player.
White American player, and that's something we're going to talk about with the future face of the NBA because I think a lot of that state kind of weighs into it. But who is it? Is it Sabonis? You could make a case because he was born in the United States.
Speaks with an accent, Sep.
But he still speaks with an accent, right? So is it? It's not Jokic. It's not Doncic. They're not from here. It's like
Kelly Olynyk. Nope, he's Canadian. You can't even have Olynyk.
Don't laugh. It could be Gordon Hayward, right? I mean, Gordon Hayward did make an All-Star.
It very well might be.
And we heard 4 years ago when he came here with Utah, and all the fans were chanting, we want Hayward, and it kind of turned off Jay Crowder. And you can see why. It's like Jay Crowder's not the player that Gordon Hayward is or was. But, it's almost like, okay, I get it. They're rooting for the white guy to come here.
Off the top of my head, that's probably the right answer.
I can't think of anybody else. And that's, before for a while, it was like Wally Zerbiak. I mean, and I'm not that far off on that, right? So, yeah, Kevin Love for a few years was really good. But yeah, you can't be an NBA fan and not embrace black
be
athletes,
a staunch
black culture.
racist.
It just doesn't make any sense, right? It'd be like, being a vegetarian butcher. Like, it just doesn't work.
Yeah, it doesn't. But the LeBron thing, I get the inclination to, especially, with Boston, because whenever there's any sort of incident in sports, people immediately go, Boston's a racist city. And there's racism in Boston. There's racism in every major city. It's just a fact.
Of course.
But with the LeBron stuff, I agree with you. I haven't seen any of the racist stuff. You have to sort of, and to anybody who's not listening, who's not from the area, I think you have to sort of understand what the fan base's mentality has been and always has been towards this ownership group, which is at best apathy, at worst downright hatred of the ownership group. Regardless of how successful they've been, they've never been embraced by the city. And now that they've sold off the second most popular player to David Ortiz in the past 20 years in Mookie Betts, people are ready to go there with pitchforks and torches.
Mookie Betts, have been watching baseball since like 1970, so I can say I've been watching it at least coherently for 50 years. Mookie Betts is the best all-around player the Red Sox have had in that stretch. All around. Maybe Ortiz and Manny.
I'm saying Ortiz is more popular. But
more popular, but Mookie Betts is the best player, and you traded him. So that's a massive turnoff. I'm not even a Red Sox fan, and I was turned off by that because you don't trade Mookie Betts. And now you hear stories of that, he's willing to stay here, and that's a whole other subject. But you're right, Jet. It's amazing that an ownership that's produced 4 World Series is kind of despised. I mean, look at the Celtics, right? Wick Grossbeck bought the Celtics, I believe, in the early 2000s, right around the same time.
01, something like that. Yeah,
right around the same time that John Henry bought the bought the Red Sox.
Right.
Who's had more success? The Red Sox have won 4 World Series.
Yeah, by far.
The Celtics have won 1. People love Wick Grossbeck. And the Celtics, you know why? They're
second most popular owner to Robert.
Without question. They love him because those guys are from here. And this is the most parochial area in the country. So Henry and Warner, they're looked at as outsiders. The Jacobs, no one really knows much about them because they're not very public. They're from Buffalo, and
people hated them for years.
But they've owned the team for 45 years, so it's almost like, okay, they're not going anywhere. But it's always amazing that John Henry and Tom Warner, who've done a lot of really good things, even in the community. I agree with you. Fenway Park should be a museum. It's not a place to go watch a baseball game, but they've even made that, a place that you could feel somewhat comfortable in, compared to before when it was just a dump, in my opinion. But yeah, and they're just not liked at all. Now you add LeBron into this, and it's going to be interesting to see.
So I think it's more of a context thing, right?
It's context thing, yeah. And the
owners already weren't well liked.
Right. Now you're bringing in, the guy who is probably the least liked superstar the city's ever faced, especially in basketball, because as great as Michael Jordan was, the Celtics really never had a rivalry with Michael Jordan.
No, they were terrible. When he was in his prime, they were terrible.
Well, when he was early, the Bulls sucked, and the Celtics...
Well, I'm saying his prime, right?
His prime. When he started winning titles, he wasn't costing you any titles because you weren't even a factor. Whereas LeBron, you could say, geez, in 2018, he was in the way of us going to the finals. And,
longer than that, he's actively blocked a bunch of Celtics teams. Actively blocked them. 5
straight playoff series that he's won between 2011 and 2018. So...
and now he's a Laker.
Now he's a Laker. Yeah, that's the ultimate. Way he shows up in a Laker jersey at Fenway, that's going to send everybody into orbit. But I find it ironic that the franchise, and this has nothing to do with Henry, Warner, and the current group, but the franchise that was always perceived as racist, and rightfully so, was the last franchise to break the color barrier, now finally has black ownership. Even if it's 2%, it is a step in the right direction because baseball doesn't have a lot of minorities owning teams either. It's a good old boys network. So I think this is a step in the right direction. I'm happy for him, and I may have to buy a Red Sox hat now.
It is. It's certainly a step in the right direction for a team that does have a very ugly history of racism. Mm-hmm. But again, I think that if you're looking at any pushback right now amongst Red Sox fans, it's all about the context of the team is at a low point. I'd say probably their lowest point in terms of fan interest and enthusiasm since the ownership group bought the team, I would say.
Yeah, you'd have to go back to like the really early 90s. I mean, Clemens was still here, but Like 92, they weren't very good. 93,
I mean,
they
people
weren't
are
very
angry,
good.
are angry with the team.
This outfield that we were all in love with, Benintendi, Jackie Bradley Jr., Mookie Betts, we thought we were going to watch that for the next decade. They're all gone.
Yeah, and then so you're bringing in suddenly a guy who has tortured a lot of Red Sox fans and Celtics fans. Obviously, overlapped, same city, and you're bringing in a guy who people actively dislike here as a sports person,
right,
to the ownership group. So it was never going to go over well. The timing couldn't have been worse in terms of making the announcement with the team. No one is expecting anything out of them this year, and again they traded their most popular player, who also happened to be one of their best players, homegrown. We could go on and on about the Mookie Betts trade because it was a horrendous move, and so it's just the timing of it is bad. It's more again about context than LeBron James himself, I think, in terms of where the Red Sox are now and how people have always felt about the ownership group anyways, that they're way more in it to make a buck than actually make the Red Sox good. And I think that people look at it this as just a continuation of that. So, good for LeBron. He's obviously going to hit that billion mark at some point in the not too distant future. Sam,
I think he already has. You think
if you take his net worth,
his net worth
assets.
probably, and he's going to need that to buy a basketball team. But like we said, he can buy a basketball team. He doesn't have to, front all the money. He can get investors. He can borrow money from a bank.
Very few people front all the money for teams anymore. It's
except Steve Ballmer, who's worth $80 billion. So $2 billion was like, me asking you for $20. It wasn't a big deal, but they borrow the money, they get investors.
Celtics group it's an ownership group. Wick doesn't own the whole team.
Rich guys do not like spending money. They like spending other people's money.
Yes, very true.
But maybe LeBron can play first base. He's 6'9". Maybe power hitting first baseman. Who knows?
We all know he'd be good at any sport he played, Sap. I mean, we don't have to expound on that. We can acknowledge that he is a freak athlete and would have been good had he chosen baseball, lacrosse, curling. I'm sure he would have been excellent at that too.
Lacrosse would be interesting.
Because a guy like that is the face of the NBA.
I see what you did there.
See what I did there. Sap, LeBron may be in the MVP candidate race this year, but knowing Father Time, taking Tom Brady out of the equation, you can't play basketball forever. And while LeBron will remain the face of the NBA until he decides to hang it up or Father Time forces him to hang it up, we're going to have a future face of the NBA. The league is star-driven more than any other sport. It is star-driven. That's how they sell tickets. That's how they sell TV packages. That is how the NBA makes its money. Since the 1980s, that's their business model. Rely on the stars. They're easily the most visible. Football, you're wearing a helmet. Hockey, you're wearing a helmet. Baseball, they have no personalities. And so the league always is looking for who's going to be the next star. After Michael Jordan hung it out the first time, the league was sort of scrambling to try to figure out who that was going to be. The second time he retired, you had already the Lakers were starting to come on the horizon in the early 2000s. Kobe was looking like an up-and-coming star. But who's it going to be now, Sap? Because Kevin Durant is not that much younger than LeBron. It seems like they may end their careers around similar times. So I don't think he's the right answer.
No.
Do you have the right answer?
Well, here's the thing. I think LeBron's going to play 3 more years after this year. So that'll get him to like 39. So we're looking at maybe the next face of the NBA around 2024.
That puts him to play with his son, right? That's why you're saying
his son. That could be. I mean, he may stick around an extra year to do that. So, but if that's the case, then those other players that could be the next man up, they're all going to be too old at that point. As you said, Durant's not that guy. Doesn't have the personality. Steph maybe, but Steph will be 36 at that point. You don't all of a sudden
past his prime.
Too old. Harden's not that guy. Kawhi certainly is not that guy. He's not communicative at all. And then, so none of the other current stars in the league are the next man up. Now, the discussion in 3-4 years of who the best player in the league is or will be could be Giannis and Luka, right? I think
it's not the same thing as the face of the league, though, right?
It's not the same thing as face in the league. And I'm not trying to be xenophobic here. I don't think a foreign player can be the face of the league. I don't think. I mean, Olajuwon was great. He was never the face of the league. Embiid is great. He's never going to be the face of the league. There's some sort of language barrier there. So I don't think Luka or Giannis, or even Joker, three great players, could be the face of the league. So I think we have to look into players that are in their first or second year in the NBA, and you may even want to go into current college players if there's someone could be electric. Yeah, because you could almost see when Bird played Magic in the NCAA championship in 1979, it was like, okay, it's still the highest rated basketball game in history, not just college basketball, period. You could say these guys are going to be pretty good. I mean, they're going to be, and they're going to the Lakers and they're going to the Celtics, and it's like the perfect storm. And still, Dr. J was that guy for a while, and then it became Bird and Magic. Then it became Michael. And as you said, when Michael retired a couple times, they never really found anybody. I mean, Kobe and Shaq, but it's tough for big guys to be the face of the league. They're just not.
You have to have a certain type of game. You have to have a certain type of game. Big dunks, athletic,
exactly.
Fast.
What do all those other guys have? They can all pass. They can shoot off the dribble. LeBron can block shots. Like Jordan was a great defensive player. So it's got to be like the perfect player with the personality. But Kobe didn't quite have it because he was too much like Jordan. Like sometimes you go from one to the other. You don't want to go from Michael to Kobe because they're so similar. So you go Michael to LeBron, who was more like Magic. You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
Kobe had a period of time where he was the face of the league.
He was, but then he had some off-court problems, which kind of stopped that.
And then he quickly became not the face of the league.
Not the face of the league at all. And I don't think Kobe ever wanted to be the face of the league. I think
it's been LeBron since 05, 06.
Pretty much. When he got to that first finals in 07, when he dragged a pretty bad team and got swept by San Antonio. But
it was a horrible team. You don't have to sugarcoat it. It was horrible.
It was bad. So at that point, it was like, okay, this is the face of the league. This guy's, obviously the guy. I mean, him being a free agent in 2010 was huge. So the two players that came up with, and it's kind of, I'm trying to process all this. The second best choice, I think, would be LaMelo Ball. And again, work with me on this. He's averaging 16, 6, and 6. He's shooting 38% from three. He's really good. But he also plays with a lot of joy. And he plays kind of like an innocence about him. He plays for Michael Jordan. I think he's got a lot going for him. I think he can learn from the mistakes that maybe his brother made. Lonzo Ball a few years earlier playing for the Lakers and now New Orleans. That's kind of like my long shot special, that I think that he could be someone if he pops. I mean, if this kid is a 25, 10, and 10 guy, which I don't think that's far-fetched, right? And Charlotte becomes somewhat of a contender, he could be that guy. He's got
a unique skill set too,
he's got a totally unique skill set. But
here's where I think he catches on with not my generation, but the one younger. The Gen Z people seem to really love him because he's very active and has been on social media since he was 12.
Which wasn't
he sort of gets
ago.
it. He gets the TikTok thing, all that stuff. So I think he could really latch on and hit with the people who are the younger generation of NBA fans. I think he's already immensely popular with them and will continue to be. Which goes to show that the market doesn't really matter. He's playing in freaking Charlotte, and he's already popular.
Yeah. I mean, LeBron played in Cleveland. Not exactly a hot market.
I could see that. I think for people like me and older generations, the fact that he does do all that social media stuff and his dad, that rubs them the wrong way, and so he might not ever catch on with older people, but I think with younger people, he will. And he's got, obviously, I think that's a big part of being a face of the league, too, is having some sort of unique, incredible skill set, and his passing is a unique and incredible skill set.
Everything. He's also a good rebounder. He's hitting threes. They're playing pretty well, Charlotte. They're right now above the Celtics.
Have a good record of the Celtics,
yeah. And they got Gordon Hayward and Terry Rozier for the next Celtics. And he's got Jordan as the owner. That wouldn't hurt. But the guy who I think is going to be the face of the league is Zion Williamson. And he's 20 years old. In his second year, he's averaging nearly 26 points per game, 7 rebounds, which to me is a disappointment.
Yeah,
I think eventually he's going to be a 30-10 guy, averaging 3.5 assists. I think he'll get that up a little bit. His defense hasn't been as good, but you don't have to be a great defensive player to be the face of the league. I mean, Magic and Bird weren't great defensive players, and they benefited Magic and Bird playing for the Lakers and the Celtics. That didn't hurt. That was a massive brand. Jordan and LeBron took pretty much suck organizations and made them relevant. The Chicago Bulls have never really been good before Jordan or after Jordan. In Cleveland, the same thing. So that's why those two guys to me are in a different league. But Zion, he plays again an awesome game, right? I mean, it's highlights. He's 6'7", 285. He's almost like a cartoon character. He's got big muscles. He plays kind of like Shaq a little bit, where he just like is a big man, not as big as Shaq, because Shaq was 7'1", 6 inches taller, but he's aggressive. You know, a lot of big guys aren't aggressive. Zion's very aggressive. Zion also has a really good personality. I mean, I think you kind of have to have that smile. And I think that LaMelo has it as well. Now Bird didn't have it. Jordan had it when he wanted to, but Zion and LaMelo both have it. But I think Zion's game is even more awesome to watch than LaMelo's game. LaMelo's game, I think, is a little bit more intricate, nuanced than Zion. Zion's like, if you don't know a lot about basketball and you're a young kid, you're like, holy crap, that guy's fun.
It's like, what do you like better,
right?
passing or dunks? You know, that's
right. And it's going to probably be more dunks, although two of the LeBron is a great passer, and so was Bird and Magic. So maybe that works as well. But I'd say Zion is my leading candidate to be the future face of the league.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's obviously who the NBA is positioning and would like to be the future face of the league, because he does have a great personality and he is an unbelievable athlete. And I wouldn't be surprised if he was to bring down the stanchion at one point.
Oh, God, yeah.
By the way, would elevate. I mean, when he blew out the shoe, that elevated him to another level in college. So I certainly think he's got a chance, though. I don't think anybody expected New Orleans to struggle as much as they have this year with a healthy Zion. So obviously, you can't be the face of the league if your team is not competitive ever. You have to. It comes with also being a good team. I mean, all those guys you mentioned have won championships, multiple championships, and multiple MVPs.
Here's the thing, though. It took them a while to win championships, except for Bird and Magic. Magic won as a rookie. Bird won in his second year. Dr. J and Michael Jordan didn't win a championship till their seventh year, but they were in finals and they were constantly playing for titles. LeBron, didn't win one till his ninth year, but he was winning MVPs and all that stuff. So, yeah, that's a great point. New Orleans are going to have to get better, which is
they're 17-23 right now. I mean, he's having a great individual season, and they blew a 20-point fourth quarter lead last night. I mean, I know Dame Lillard's our MVP favorite, but still, you shouldn't be blowing 20-point leads in the fourth quarter.
They blow more leads than the Atlanta Falcons did in the Super Bowl. I mean, they're constantly blowing big leads, which is not a good thing. I mean, I'm not a huge fan of Stan Van Gundy. I am on social media. I kind of agree with him.
Former coach of UMass Lowell, by the way.
Oh, yeah, he's coached everywhere. And he looks like the porn star.
Ron Jeremy, yes.
Ron Jeremy, yes. You answered that quickly. So I think that I don't know if he's the right coach for this team either. I mean, you get Brandon Ingram, you got Lonzo Ball, you get some nice players, but I think Zion's a guy. But you're right, both of these young men, they're going to have to win. You can't not make the playoffs and be the face of the league. It doesn't work that way.
To LaMelo's credit, he's come in and impacted winning. That team was horrible last year. Obviously, they got the third pick, and they're in the playoffs right now. Season ended today,
and they got Gordon Hayward too. That was a good signing.
So, but 2 years now in a row. Last year, the Pelicans went into the bubble, and everybody said, okay, well, the reason they made the bubble this way is to get Zion in the playoffs. Yeah. They stunk in the bubble. I mean, they were one of the worst teams in it. And this year, people said, okay, well, Zion's going to be fully healthy. And they have not seized any sort of momentum or anything. I mean, is there any reason they should have a worse record than the Grizzlies or the Warriors or the Spurs in your mind?
No, they have, Zion was an all-star. Brandon Ingram was an all-star the year before and is a borderline all-star this year. I think Lonzo Ball's improving as a player. Like, it's just not working together. They don't really play defense.
Steven Adams on that team too.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's kind of cooked at this point, but he's a big, strong guy who can grab some rebounds. So yeah, they should be better than that. Again, Stan Van Gundy, I like him more personally than as a coach.
So maybe he's not a force multiplier, Seth.
Zion, he may not be. Whereas Lonzo, LaMelo might be.
Yeah, I keep track of all of them.
All the balls, yes. LaMelo is, and by the way, you probably love the father, right? Because he's out there.
I like hype men in general. I think that it gets a little out of control. I don't like it when you make things harder on your kids sometimes.
Right.
I think LeBron has admitted as much, that naming his kid after him made his life harder than it had to be.
Oh, man. Yeah. No, you're absolutely right about that. That is probably not the easiest thing for the young man to deal with.
Screwed Lonzo really badly with the overhype, because the expectations were unrealistic.
Yeah, he was going to beat Steph Curry one-on-one. Like, okay, great. He's going to be better than Michael Jordan. He's going to be better than Magic Johnson. They're going to retire his number. It's like, wait, hold on one second. Whereas now what happens is oftentimes the oldest in a family, like you're the oldest in your family, I'm the youngest. So there's a different vibe there. Oftentimes the youngest gets the benefit of maybe the parents being tired by the time they're in an age to be formative, whereas the oldest has got to deal with, well, this is the first time I'm doing this as a parent. So it's tougher on the older one. And I think it was for Lonzo. LaMelo's doing so much better. And then LiAngelo apparently doesn't have the talent of the two sons, and he's got maybe the middle child syndrome. But I think that LaMelo, I really enjoy watching him play. I do. I just like the joy. I like guys that look like they're having a good time out there. And it's like Steph Curry does to me. And I think that's
Kemba Walker was before the season.
Yeah, before the season, he always did. I mean, I think he's dealing with a lot with that knee and everything, or maybe the Celtics have just got this black cloud over
Isaiah
it.
Thomas always played with a lot of joy. Too.
Yes.
Both of them, actually. Both Isaiah Thomases.
Yeah, I love guys that do that. Chris Paul doesn't necessarily. He plays with
he's always angry, very angry.
He's angry, but I think he's almost at I think he is at genius level as a basketball player. It's almost like he's tortured being out there, like the game is his artwork.
Either way can work. You can play with joy, you can play with anger. You just got to have something motivating you, right?
Well, because Jordan played with anger and joy. I mean, he's the one guy that kind of pulled it off. Magic played with joy. Bird.
Kevin Garnett was the
anger.
most intense human being I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, he was insane. So as long as you have something, but I think you're looking elsewhere for the future face of the league.
Yeah, and also, just to round about Wade Haas, to answer your question about LeVar Ball, I like it when athletes hype their own selves up. Like, that's why I like Jalen Ramsey in the NFL. Like, he's talking trash, but it's him. He can back it up. LeVar is writing checks for his kids.
Yeah,
it's true. I don't love that. Just because it puts him in such. The only reason that LaMelo Ball fell to 3 was because Lonzo struggled in the NBA to start his career, and people looked at it as it's going to be the same thing. Because otherwise, he was pretty clearly the top choice in my mind.
Imagine if Minnesota took him to go with Karl-Anthony Towns. What about
I like Edwards.
Golden State? I like Edwards too, but imagine. I mean, it would have been an interesting fit. LaMelo with Curry, that might have been something spectacular because Curry's the easiest superstar to play with. But we're daydreaming now because he's in Charlotte.
You move him to the 2, Curry, easily. He doesn't have to be the primary ball handler.
He's just a guard.
I'm telling you, that's why he ended up 3s because Lonzo struggled, and part of why Lonzo struggled is because his dad was giving insane, unrealistic expectations for him.
And the thing is, I think that LeVar means well. I mean, I think he's a good dad. He's supportive of his kids and all that stuff, and but I think, you're exactly right, Jed. It's just over the top.
So the guys I had Zion on my list too, because obviously he was the number 1 overall pick. He was the most hyped number 1 overall pick since probably LeBron in terms of people generating fan interest.
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah.
So that makes sense. I mean, he's got a cool haircut. He's an unbelievable athlete. I totally, for all the reasons you said, personality, I agree with you, Sap. I just got to see some winning out of him. Yep. I mentioned this in our last show. The guy who's going to be the presumptive number 1 pick this year, Cade Cunningham, has all the skills and tools to be an incredible NBA player. He's athletic. He's fast. He can do everything. It may be what team he ends up on might dictate how quickly he becomes a superstar. But if you're projecting guys that are going to be the face of the league, it's safe to usually bet on guys who are going to be the top overall pick. Magic Johnson was. Larry Bird would have been had Red Auerbach not fleeced the rest of the league on that one. LeBron obviously was. Jordan was the 3rd pick, but was a household name before he got into the NBA because he was a star at North Carolina. So Cade Cunningham, somebody I look at is sort of that mold, just banking on the talent and the number 1 pick pedigree. And there's 2 guys who have had multiple high school games already on TV. Emoni Bates, who's supposed to go to Michigan State, but most people expect to just go straight to the G League, and Chet Holmgren, who's going to Minnesota, I believe, but also might go the G League route. Those are the 2 top recruits in the next recruiting cycle. Bates has been talked about since he was in middle school. Holmgren, who a lot of people actually consider to be a better prospect right now, is like 7'2" with point guard skills.
He's like Porzingis at the next level, right?
Yeah, he's like a better Porzingis, and Bates is like Durant. So both of these guys have been talked about a ton. They're both, if you watch them play, incredible, but skinny as rails. Like, I mean, really, really skinny. And granted, they're 17 years old.
They'll fill out, yeah.
So those are two guys that, if you're looking at the hype train for those two guys is off the charts. Again, when you're getting multiple high school games on national television, that's a pretty good sign. People are pretty good at scouting basketball. It's easier than scouting football, where there's so many players, and you really stand out a lot more in a basketball court because there's less guys. You're dominating, and these guys have been dominating since they were 13 years old. So those are two guys you can look at. Holmgren might quickly be the answer to our question of who's the best white American basketball player.
Could be, yeah. I've seen him play, yeah.
And Bates is, I mean, basically, if you looked at Kevin Durant at the same age, they have the exact same body type. Long wingspan, can shoot from anywhere on the court, can dribble. Is going to be 7 feet tall by the time he reaches the NBA with point guard skills. And so those two guys certainly have the talent and the hype to be the future face of the NBA. It could be some time. You're giving LeBron 3-4 years left in the NBA. That would put them in their second years or third years in the NBA. Still not necessarily close to their peak or their prime of their career, but could really start showing signs that they'll take over. So those are the guys I have on my list. I agree with you on. I should have put LaMelo Ball on there too, because I think he could certainly be it. It's hard because LeBron is so unique in that he's had such a long career and isn't really slowing down all that much. Guys that could have ended up being as the face of the NBA didn't. So I'm sure that's frustrating to a guy like Kevin Durant or even a guy like James Harden or Kyrie Irving, who thought that, they should be faces of the NBA, but LeBron's just outlasted everybody.
The best candidate of the players that are still great in the NBA, but they're now too old to succeed. LeBron is Steph Curry. I mean, that makes the most sense. Again, he plays with a lot of joy. Very relatable guy, which it doesn't have to be relatable. Like, there's no way on earth that anybody can relate to, 6'9", 6'10" guys with that skill level. But you can relate to Steph Curry, who's 6'2", maybe 6'3". I know the female players love Steph Curry. Young girls love Steph Curry. He's like their guy, and that's a big part of the fan base, right? But Curry's 32.
Very
now.
wholesome too, like very family man, religious. His wife does the cooking stuff.
Yeah, I got the cute kids, and the father was a really good NBA player, and his mother is a very attractive woman. So it's like he would be the guy.
But very like all-American family, right? Like apple pie.
Perfect.
He goes to church. His wife stays at home and bakes. Writes cookbooks.
His brother plays in the NBA. Doc Rivers is the brother's father-in-law. I mean, it's pretty cool. But Steph would be the guy because he's got that joyful personality.
But he's never passed LeBron, and LeBron. By the time LeBron's done, Curry will almost be done too.
Yeah. So that's why we had to reach into high school. And college and, players in their first and second year in the NBA. But pretty good conversation to see who the future face of the NBA is.
Well, do you agree, Sap, that until he hangs it up, LeBron's going to remain as the face of the NBA? Even if the skills diminish, just because of the cachet. I'm not saying diminish to the point he's never going to be a Jag.
No. I think he's a guy that, in his last year might decide to lead the league in rebounding or do something close to that. Yeah, no, I don't think that's going to happen. I mean, Magic retired prematurely. Jordan retired a couple times. Like, was Jordan still the face of the franchise of the league when he was in Washington? Yeah, he was. The Wizards were on a lot because
I'd venture to say
Jordan.
That was still probably the top selling jersey in the NBA that year.
Especially when you go to a new team. It's like Brady goes to Tampa and sells a ton of jerseys because it's a new jersey. Who doesn't want Michael Jordan and another jersey? So, I think he'll still be the face of it because he's also the most active socially when it comes to, race relations. Like when something happens in the country,
he's the soundbite that the media
He's the soundbite.
Right?
And I'm not just talking about athletes. I'm talking everyone.
Yeah, that's true.
It seems like we hear more from him than, say, President Obama, Oprah Winfrey, whoever. I mean, it seems like LeBron's the guy, and he's very, very comfortable with that.
But as Jordan showed, you don't have to be the person that's always expounding on that to be the face of the league.
And Dr. J never did it. Magic didn't do it. Bird didn't do it. LeBron's
Bird
really
didn't know what was going on.
Bird didn't know who Bruce Springsteen was.
He was singularly focused on basketball.
Well, they one time, I think McHale was a huge Springsteen fan, and he was like, He wanted to take Larry Bird to see Bruce Springsteen, and Bird thought it was Rick Springfield. But then he said to McHale, "Who is this Springsteen guy?" He goes, "Larry, he's the you of rock and roll. Like the guy that goes on stage for 3.5 hours."
Means nothing to him, yeah.
It means nothing to him, but he's like, but Springsteen, in fact, I think Dan Shaughnessy used to call Larry Bird the hungry-hearted forward. Because there was a comparison of Springsteen and Bird. It was like they played so hard, and like at the end of their basketball game or concert, they were drenched. You were drenched because they were just, flat out awesome at what they did. So it was like a good comparison. Bird didn't even follow that stuff. But yeah, you don't have to be socially active. I mean, in some ways in the past, it probably would have hurt you because Kareem was socially active. Russell was socially active. But I don't think a big guy can be the face of the league. I mean, Shaq was probably the only one equipped to do that, and he never was the face of the league.
Yeah, I think it's the big guys. There's that old adage: big guys never sell sneakers, and they don't.
Right.
Shaq has tried and failed to sell sneakers.
Yeah, and if he can't,
certainly
who can?
He's one of the most popular players. But yeah, it's just for whatever reason, it's guards and forwards. It's never centers, and I think it'll continue that way, especially as these 7-footers exceedingly don't play center anyways.
No, they don't play center. No, they really.
Durant's been playing small forward his whole career. He's 7 feet tall.
Yeah, he's 7 feet tall.
He hasn't been playing power forward. He's been playing small forward.
I mean, Jokic is 7 feet tall. He could lead the league in assists one year. Something Will Chamberlain did, by the way, one year. Will said, "I'm going to lead the league in assists," so that was pretty cool.
Decided to. So yeah, I think all those have the chance, and there's somebody I'm sure off of both of our radars that could easily end up being as the face of the league. I do think though it's a unique situation with the current players in the league. Unless you're a rookie or in your second year, it's because LeBron has just lapped everybody.
He really has. It's like people running, wanted to run for president when FDR was president. He just had this long stretch. Yeah, what are you going to do? This guy.
Football has experienced a very similar thing with Tom Brady.
Yeah, and the thing with Tom Brady,
he's lasted for so long.
But the difference in football is you can have a face of the league. The shield is the entity of the league.
I said this at the beginning, Sap. The NBA is by far the most star-focused of the leagues.
And I think right now, as great as Brady is, he's not the face of the league anymore.
They wear helmets. They wear helmets in football.
Yeah, exactly.
It's Mahomes and Brady, though. You can't. Yeah, it's still Brady. You could put both of them and I think I'm fine with that. But Brady hasn't diminished in terms of his star at all.
And the thing about Brady and somewhat like LeBron, they can be polarizing. So they're not only wildly popular, but there are a lot of people that don't like them. They're sick of them winning, sick of them always playing in the finals or in the Super Bowl.
Both of them top-selling jerseys, though. Top-selling in the NFL, top-selling in the NBA.
Yep. Which is amazing.
Look it up. It's an absolute fact.
I mean, it helped that Brady went to a new team, but he's always up there, even with the Patriots. Because I think
the year before he was 2.
Yeah, no, he's right there. So, and they can survive without – the NBA does need that because LeBron drives ratings. The league has suffered a ratings dip with him going to the Western Conference because now those Eastern Conference games don't have LeBron, and you see a little bit of dip in ratings.
They're later in the evening for the Eastern Conference. People don't watch the Lakers as much because they're on later. And also, one more point to the NFL versus the NBA. Some of the faces of franchises in the NFL happen to be the coach.
Yeah,
in the NBA. It's with the exception of maybe Greg Popovich.
Popovich.
Coach is not the main attraction in the NBA.
No, Belichick is the face of the Patriots right now, without question. And
one of the most famous figures in the league, players included. Belichick. Everybody knows who Bill Belichick is,
without question. Especially after those Subway commercials,
because they have so much media responsibility. The NFL coaches, and so they're constantly in your face. NBA coaches have media responsibility too, but no one's really blaming them if you botch a whole game plan for one game. In the NFL, it means a whole lot more. So it's a great question, Sap. I'm glad you posed it, and I think the most likely answer is maybe somebody we're not thinking of.
Could be someone.
That's probably the most likely answer. But all we can do is speculate, and I think all those guys we came up with: LaMelo, Zion, Cade Cunningham, Bates, Holmgren, all of them have a good chance at it. It just matters when LeBron decides to hang it up.
Yeah, someone will.
Have to buy into another team.
The king will cede the crown at some point when he feels it.
If he buys an NBA team, does he just remain the face of the NBA?
Because I think he's going to be active as an owner. I don't think he's going to be Michael Jordan. I think
Right,
he'll
so
be active.
say he retires and a year later he buys the Cavs. Is there ever a new face of the league, or is it LeBron for eternity?
LeBron is the owner. Well, maybe that goes back to an early discussion we have is, if we move on from the silhouette of Jerry West as the, logo of the NBA, who's it going to be? I think it would be Jordan. That would be my choice. But yeah, maybe that competitiveness between Jordan and LeBron spills over when they both own teams. That would be interesting to see.
Yeah, they both own two of the crap franchises in the NBA, the Cavs and the. I think
most
people think the Cavs are the most likely team he buys, right?
But Dan Gilbert probably won't sell it to him. Unless
What's
Dan
he gonna buy,
Gilbert,
the Timberwolves.
Well, yeah, that's probably what or an expansion team. But you
That's
also
true.
look and see that I know Dan Gilbert wants to own the Detroit Tigers at some point. He's got the money to own both, but maybe he sells the Cavs, uses that money, as part of his deal to get the Tigers. But there's no love lost between those two, so I can't see him, ceding ownership to LeBron James. But
you're right, an expansion team may actually be the most likely.
Yeah. And the league the two guys that the league always has to try to make good with are Michael Jordan and LeBron James. They've been so important to the growth of the league. Jordan probably stepped ahead of everybody to get the Hornets, right? And I think, and deservedly so.
Also had the money for it, so
had the money.
That's all that matters at the end of the day is if the check clears, right?
It's not like Antoine Walker, who's in debt or whatever, that wanted to buy an NBA team. But yeah, at some point maybe an expansion team. I know Seattle is the most
Vegas,
likely expansion team.
They've talked about, where else the hell have they talked about? Louisville. I know
that'd be interesting.
They've been trying to lure one. Seattle is the obvious one.
Yeah.
I think Seattle would really want a local person to own the team because
absolutely.
I think they're very gun shy of somebody else buying a team that's from. They sold the team to a guy from Oklahoma. He immediately moved to Oklahoma.
Right. No. They want a local guy. Maybe they'll get Russell Wilson to buy it, but he may.
And
not
I think
be
that's
local.
important to the league too. Is they like the local owners.
Oh sure, yeah, absolutely, yeah. Dan Gilbert's a Detroit guy. He's not a Cleveland guy. So Wick and the guys for the Celtics are local guys. So they do like that.
Yeah. So that will do it for the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap, presented by our friends at Full Press Coverage. We're going to have plenty of stuff coming up because, as we talked about in an earlier show, trade deadline is fast approaching. And even if it's not an active deadline, that would indicate a very active buyout market. So we will be paying very, very close attention to not just the guys who are traded, but the guys who are not traded. And that has as big a chance as anything is shaping the finals race. So we're going to be really busy the next couple of weeks with plenty of NBA content. So make sure to listen. You can find us wherever podcasts are, on Spotify, Spreaker, YouTube coming soon, maybe today even, Twitter. And remember to say what you like, say what you don't like about the podcast. We will either use your advice or not, but we will interact with you one way or the other. Sap, do you have any columns coming up that people should be on the lookout for?
Yeah, future face of the NBA.
Nice.
I kind of gave it away a little bit, but we'll just kind of go through all that. And
do you need my help how to spell Emoni Bates?
I'll have to look that one up. I may have to throw that into a paragraph of let's go as deep as high school. How about this one? Maybe LeBron's son, Bronny Jr., maybe he'll be the face of the NBA by the time Dad retires.
I've watched him play.
That's a lot of pressure. That's
not
a
his
lot
dad.
of pressure. Yeah. That's a lot of pressure.
I don't feel bad for him because he's rich and happy and he's a handsome kid, and I'm sure he does fine with the ladies, and he's we're living a very nice life.
Yeah,
he's not as good as his dad. It's not even close. And
all of his games
are on TV.
I know.
They're doing a Hulu or an Amazon Prime series on him. He has the same name as his dad. It's really LeBron's a great dad. I'm not taking anything away from him, but he put him in a crap position.
And he says really much right by saying that by naming him after him.
Naming him that, and he's producing the show about the team. He should not
back off a little
that.
bit.
It's not the only person that is going to be benefiting from it is the guys who were on the Sierra Canyon team who wouldn't otherwise have been scouted. It's not Bronny James who's benefiting from it.
No, they're going to be like, this is pretty cool, right? We're on
they
TV,
love it. I'm sure they love it, but it's no good for the kid is getting screwed.
No, it's tough. But I think if he adapts to that and grows from that, you're going to see a successful young man because he's dealt with this from a very, very early age.
Yeah, it's
Not necessarily on the basketball court, but in life.
He might end up as a mid-first round pick, second round pick, and still the expectations are going to be just through the roof, ridiculously, unfairly high. I mean, Jordan's kids played in college and they weren't that good.
Yeah, no. I mean, you don't recreate perfection with Jordan, LeBron, whatever. I'm going to see if Tom Brady's sons get into football.
Probably not.
Probably not. Brady would be playing in the same league with them at that point. They're much younger than everybody's much younger than Tom Brady. But it's going to be interesting to see what happens with all of that.
All right, so be on the lookout for that column from Mr. John Sapichetti on Full Press Coverage. He's currently typing it on his phone like a psychopath because he doesn't have a computer. And make sure to look out for it. All of our stuff on Twitter. Follow me at Jet Stryer and follow Sap at John Sap25. Thanks, everybody, for listening to the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap, presented by Full Press Coverage. We'll be back tomorrow with a new show. See you then.